Welcome to Black Republican, Black Democrat. I'm Jamar.
And I'm AK Kamara, your other co-host.
You didn't know how to. You didn't know who you were. You were a little discombobulated over there.
The volume was down on my headphones, so I'm like, can anybody hear me?
Yeah. Hello.
Is this thing on?
Yeah, you're there.
How you been, man?
I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. Jamar. You love when I say that.
How's your week been, bro?
You know what? God is good. I won't do too much complaining because we only got an hour, and then the show just started, so we won't. I won't complain about my damn woes and what's worrying me. I'm alive and I'm here. Thank you. Thank the audience, and we got the greatest producer in the world.
How was Valentine's Day, bro?
I don't know. It was Valentine's Day.
You just chilled?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do shit.
Well, not to toot my own horn, but
I see what you were doing. You thought you were Billy Ocean or somebody.
You see what I did?
Who do you think you were? Robin Leach? All the caviar dreams and the champagne you had?
So I mess with pots and pans. I can chef it up. And I was at Lunds and Byerly's.
Yeah. And
I saw that they had some lobster. And I was like, they had good deals on it. And I've made lobster in the past. And my wife loves like mac and cheese. Like every good Minnesota girl, she loves, macaroni and cheese. So I got macaroni and cheese, got lobster, had some steak, right? And yeah, man, made some.
I mean, your meal looked good.
Made it good, man.
Your meal looked good, and your wife was blessed, and you're a lucky guy.
On the first Valentine's Day after we got married. So we got married, and it was like the first Valentine's Day, and I was like, what should I get? And I got this. I got
you're a tattoo. You're a gangster.
This side.
You're a gangster.
I got my wife's name, Bethany, on the side of my neck. That was my first Valentine's Day present to my wife.
You tried to kill yourself, huh? You didn't wait until 10 years in.
No,
you want to kill yourself. You kill yourself the
first year,
okay.
Man. First year.
I ain't mad at you. I have one tattoo. And it's state of Texas, and it's got Dallas inside of it. And it's got
you would,
well, of course,
that would be the tattoo that you
Cowboys.
have.
It's got Cowboys in the middle, and then But I almost passed out, and I learned that tattoos from the navel above, you're prone to pass out more whether you're drinking or smoking.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Tattoos down, you're less likely. But
I've only had it in my arms and my neck, man. That's it.
Yeah, you're liable to get lightheaded. So they suggest that after the session is done, for you to sit and not move for 15 minutes.
Get a juice, get some crackers,
yeah, or something. Yeah, Gatorade. Because when I stood up, I was like, oh. And so I was gonna put my ex-wife's name on me.
Yeah.
But again, I got too chicken, and because those damn things hurt. I'm sitting there like, he's like, you hurt? I'm like, no. Dude, it hurted. And then I had the nerve. So he just the one tattoo guy just did the Texas, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't colored in. So one day I was waiting for my wife, and I went into the tattoo shop on Lake Street and showed to do my tattoos. Like, dude, that's ugly. I'm like,
dang,
what?
Just like that, huh?
Yeah, he's like, so let me color it in. He's like, you should came in and let us did. I'm like, you could have drawn the state of Texas no better than this guy did. I mean, I copied it for the guy. I mean, it came out of the map book. What do you mean? You could have did it no better. I could have did such and such for. So anyway, long story short, he colored it for me.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, now that hurt. Well, you've got color, so
I got some shade,
but you've got bigger arms.
Yeah. I got a lot of meat on these bones, bro.
Yeah, indeed you do.
Uh-huh.
And no. Needless to say that's the last tattoo that I had. I think this summer I'm gonna get one on my leg though.
Okay.
Of my kid's name.
Okay.
I'm gonna be cool, Dad.
You're gonna put like all your kids' names?
I'm gonna put all my.
It's
kids'
gonna be running all up and down your leg.
I know. I have I don't think I have any room.
My mother-in-law, she didn't get her first tattoo. She was like, I want to say like 55 or something.
I don't blame her.
Right, and then now she has like roses for each of her kids.
Yeah.
But nothing for her grandkids. So
that shit hurts.
There's like 13 or 12 of them, maybe 12 or 13. My wife's siblings got a lot of kids.
Oh
There's a lot of them, man. There's a lot of them running around out there.
Okay.
You know what, man? I've been like looking back through Facebook. I think we came up on like a year anniversary of me being on the show as like an official co-host. Yeah. So it's crazy though how a whole year went by, man. And I'm so grateful for all the support we've had from all the listeners. And I just want to plug right now that if you haven't had a chance, please head to our link tree. It's kind of the one-stop shop to get connected to us on all of our socials. Those of you that have figured out TikTok and are on TikTok, you might have been seeing a few videos that Jamar and I have been putting out there. We're getting a lot of interaction. Not to toot our own horn, but I'm toot our own horn again. We've had over 330,000 views on our content just in the last 7 days. So that's kind of where we're at. But it also on the link tree, it's going to connect you to our Patreon. Our Patreon's big because if you support this show and you're like, I want to see more of this, we do once a week podcasts. But if we had the funding, AKA we had contributors, we would do more shows. We might do longer shows. And so if you like the content we put out and you're like, I would like to see more content from these guys, please visit on the link tree, our Patreon link, and consider becoming a contributor to the show. 100% of what we raise goes to the actual production of the show. And so that's just something that you guys can do. Also, you can get connected with our Instagram. You can also get connected with my Twitter account. Jamar doesn't have a Twitter. Maybe one day he'll make a Twitter so you can interact with us that way.
Dude, I have a Twitter. Are you kidding? Yes, I do. It's don't ask me right now. But
see, that's how much this guy tweets.
No, I'm actually on my Twitter every day. I just can never remember any names. I'm just glad Facebook doesn't have. Listen, I'm on Twitter. Look me up, okay? It's the picture of me and my ex-wife that I haven't changed.
But just make sure that you guys hit our link tree. It also connects you with how you can listen to us via podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everything, the whole 9 yards. So please visit that, support what it is that we do. If you like what it is that we do.
Absolutely. And you know what? Actually, I was sitting here looking too, speaking of, we had to do, I love when the audience gets interactive and starts interacting with us. And so there was a question already asking about, he said, ask the Democrat why the left is afraid of the Parents' Right bill. This is from Chris Rode.
Craig Rode.
I'm sorry, Craig. Thank you. That's why I wear glasses. And he also said, talk about the influx of Asian hate crimes and why nobody is doing anything about it. Well, let me just say this in a small synopsis because we got a great show today. The Asian hate, I think, is overblown. To be quite honest with you, I'm just gonna say it. We don't see it happening on a daily, weekly basis. Some folks got pissed off and cruelly tried and started attacking some folks of Asian descent. Black folks have been enduring that for years, did endure it for years. So I think that any type of crime against a person for their race is sadistic and deserves the death penalty.
Whoa.
Yeah, I do. I think that when it becomes a bigger and broader problem, then we should address it. But I think right now it isn't. And I think some folks are probably rolling their eyes at me or saying that it is. Craig is probably yelling at, saying it is a big problem. Well, I'm on the east side of St. Paul a lot where there's a heavy population of Asian folks, and
among Americans, Vietnamese.
That's not, something that they talk about. They're talking about regular things that folks are talking about, like at the kitchen table. The economy. How you're going to get them a job, or what you're going to do for them, things like that. So Asian hate,
No, here's the thing that I've always considered. Now, when I do look at the statistics, right, violent crime on an individual basis has been increasing in recent years, but if you want to say looking over the last 30 years. Violent crime is down, and that's because of, in my opinion, a lot of the different crime bills that were passed to be able to kind of stem some of these issues. But here's been my problem. We talk about hate crimes. Like I think that they're political tools, and the reason I think they're political tools is that most of the time crime is motivated by factors, and if someone wants
and hate sometimes is one of them.
Sure, but I'm saying that if you want to commit harm onto somebody else, whether or not the reason you're doing it is because they're black or because they're fat or because they're just the unlucky person that's in front of you or because it's someone that you felt did you wrong, to me crime is crime. And so I've always thought it was interesting and I don't understand, other than for political points, why you would categorize that certain crime is more malicious. Like I can understand if crime is based off of like like vulnerable people, right? Like if
that should be treated differently.
If you're yes,
okay.
Because
so then how do we differentiate between someone that's a vulnerable adult and then someone that's gay or someone that's black, someone that's Asian?
Because it's a depraved mentality.
It doesn't matter.
Being
that
black,
person
being
has decided
gay,
to.
Right, doesn't mean you can't protect yourself in the same regard. Being a child or being
but being a vulnerable adult, we don't know what I mean. It's just
I'm saying that there actually is a physical deficiency. They cannot defend themselves in the same way. So that to me makes sense. But again,
55-year-old person is a vulnerable adult considered by the state.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And again, right? If someone is vulnerable, that's different than someone has.
But
this
I'm
immutable
vulnerable
trait.
if I'm 105 pounds, black, and homosexual.
Yeah, but your blackness or your sexuality has nothing to do with how vulnerable you are. Your mental capacity.
But that individual,
the
assailant, is attacking me or trying to kill me or walks into a church and shoots our brains out because we're black.
I understand that, but I'm saying that the motivation.
So there should be. I'm glad that there are federal charges that are always attached to most of these crimes, like the cats and the Arbery. What's his last name?
The Michaels. Ahmaud Arbery.
Ahmaud Arbery. Excuse me. I'm glad that they, i.e. George Floyd too. Thank God for some federal charges, because when you violate my civil rights to be black.
Yeah, but civil rights has nothing to do with what your color is, though. You can violate someone's civil rights. If you're a white person, you can violate another white person's civil rights. But it's not dependent on color. But if it's a hate crime, a white person can't commit a hate crime against another white. And when I say white person, let's clarify. A white Norwegian can't commit crime against another white Norwegian. It wouldn't be considered a hate crime.
No.
It can be a civil rights violation.
And it is.
It can be, depending on the situation, and that's my piece. We could go on for days, but thank you for the comments. Keep them coming. We're gonna read them as they kind of pop up. We're gonna try and do that versus just save them.
We'll
all
put
for
them
the
we'll put them up on the screen and then keep y'all interactive. First of all, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. I hope that everyone that's watching has hit that share button, not only the like,
hit
but the
share and the
button,
like, so people have a chance to join in on this conversation.
Because tonight's show, we have with all this going on in the city and the state. Tonight's guest is perfect to talk about a lot of the things that's going on, right? We talk about how crime is rising in our city. Minneapolis alone, right? Mm-hmm. Minneapolis alone is now officially over 200 murders between last year and this year. Over 200 murders. That's effing ridiculous, right? We've had 7 already. Ridiculous. And I think, again, the city is so damn reactive, right? They're not proactive. And sometimes, quite often, I think it's easier for the governor, no matter what party, well, of course, Republicans pretend like they don't, but the governor or a mayor of certain parties scapegoat certain police departments, right? Mm-hmm. I do believe there's corruption in Minneapolis Police Department and certain police departments across this state. But I think sometimes they're scapegoated by elected officials because they don't lead. They take such a offensive approach to crime because I didn't see this coming, or what do you think we should do? Well, bastard, I've been telling you for so long that crime is on the rise. Gun crime is on the rise. Here, I'm going to say this. I'm going to be bold and say this, and I'm going to piss some folks off. Juvenile crime is now it's probably as high as it's ever been in this city, probably this state. Right, when you talk about carjackings, gun crimes committed by juveniles, we got to quit slapping them on the wrist because they have a certain shade of skin. Mm. We got to quit doing that, right? You commit a crime, you commit adult crime, you should be charged as adult and go do adult time. I don't give a damn what color you are. We have to stop coddling kids that commit adult crime and slap them on the wrist and put them back on the street so they can reoffend. I think I love trying to say this word. The
recidivism.
Thank you. Rate is incredibly higher now too than it's ever been. So I can't wait to sit down with honest people that want to come up with real solutions to fix it. And tonight's guest, I think, isn't here to defend either one of those, but I think helps with the dialogue that we need to have. And so when you come on this show, when you walk into the danger zone, we love you. Damn it. I mean, honestly, I think for real, it's nuts. And so, yeah. I mean, listen, let's just cut right to it. Tonight's guest is from the Minnesota, Police and Peace Officers Association. We want to welcome to the show Brian Peters. Brian, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here. It was a great show. We'll see you next time after that dialogue. I'm out of here. No. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we got a funny guy here. I love that. Wait a minute. I work alone, okay?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I work alone.
One of the things that I was excited, we have a lot of people that have been on the show and found out through a few different connections that you're someone that, one, was interested in the show itself, but myself, I always wanted to have this type of dialogue talking about a lot of these issues that have to do with law enforcement. And I think that there's a side to this conversation that doesn't get had very often because law enforcement in general, when they're speaking to the public, are in the capacity as a public official. They're not elected most of the time, unless you're talking about a sheriff, right? They are appointed and they have very specific duties. And so I want to be able to have some of these conversations about some of these topics that have been very, very prescient in the news. And but I want you to kind of explain, one, what is the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association, and two, a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, thanks, AK. I'm the executive director of the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association. We're a private association representing roughly over 10,000 law enforcement across the state. Anywhere from troopers, deputies, city cops. We have some correctional officers, 911 dispatchers, and then we have about 2,000 retired members. And we serve kind of two purposes. One is we do all the legislative advocacy here at the state level as well as the federal level. So we have a lobbyist out in Washington that helps us work with our Minnesota representatives on bills. And we have a lobbyist here in Minnesota. And obviously, it's been a very busy 22 months when it comes to legislation. And then our other function is we serve as we have our legal defense fund. And what that means is if you're a police officer and you're involved in a critical incident where you could potentially be charged criminally for an offense, we have 13 of the top defense attorneys here in the state that will represent you. So it could be anything from, let's say, a police chase that ends with injury or death. Your actions are going to be reviewed and potential charges could come. So our attorneys step in and represent you right away. And then obviously another example is an officer-involved shooting. So
those don't happen often at all. No.
But it was interesting, Jamar, when you talked, especially about the juvenile crime. One of the conversations that I try to have with a lot of legislators is, something happens and we want to make a reaction to it, right? We want to fix something. But what we don't talk about and what police officers face every day when they're doing the job is what are the root causes to some of these issues. Cops are expected to fix, situations in minutes that may have lasted for decades. And, there are situations that government hasn't been able to fix, whether it's mental health, domestic abuse, drug abuse, and, you name it. And so, the things that are put on cops these days is sometimes you can't fix it. But, at the legislature, that's what I really try to push is it's harder to solve these root causes. When you talk about juvenile crime, I was a police officer in Brooklyn Center for 15 years.
Okay.
I was a patrol officer. I left in 2015 at the rank of commander. So did various, jobs throughout the department. And back in 2008, if you remember, local government aid was cut to a lot of cities. And Brooklyn Center was a city that depended on local government aid to function. And, some of the things that are first cut when cities are facing a budget crisis is juvenile programs. When I was a kid, I remember I could go down to, the local park and there'd be a high school student that ran, the warming house where you could go, play games, play basketball. And so those are some of the programs that are first cut. And we experienced that in Brooklyn Center.
Yep.
And until we start talking about that dialogue of why are these kids all of a sudden, committing these carjackings at age 13, 14, what are we doing? You can't fix sometimes a broken family, but you can give kids an opportunity to have positive interactions that hopefully keep them on the straight and narrow. And it just seems like we've gotten away from that. And so, I a lot of times just like to talk about what are the root causes? Why are we here?
No, absolutely. No, you're saying a lot of things that I think a lot of elected leaders and I talk about too as well. You're right. You do got to get down to the root cause of what's going on. And sometimes no doubt, it's generational trauma. It can be financial, hardship that one is experiencing. But I do believe sometimes police can be scapegoated, right? Because of the elected leaders, it's easier to stick the dagger in the police departments while they're already being stoned instead of taking some responsibility, saying, okay, I think we effed up here. I.e., again, Amir Locke. Have we heard much responsibility being had from the mayor, from the police chief? No. I think a lot of times what pisses especially black and brown folks off is immediately a police chief already automatically comes to bat for her or his or her police officers. Well, it was a justified shooting. She as well, Interim Huffman, automatically says, well, if you look in the video, it looks like he raised his gun and then he aimed it at them. Well, I'm glad you're here. Because using their freeze frame of the other officer, not the one that shot the guy, but looking at using their freeze frame, I'd never seen his finger on the trigger. His finger was on the gun, just like I was trained, and AK and I were talking about it last week, the way you're trained. And not to mention he had a cover over his head, so he could not have posed too much of a threat. You said, officers, that your association deals with those things. Right now, I mean, you've had three back-to-back police-involved shootings. Do you guys just does your association automatically justify the behavior of those officers right after those shootings?
No, I think you have to wait till all the facts come out. I mean, nowadays, it's almost like who's the first to speak, and we want to get our side out there. And I don't think that does anything. It doesn't create the trust that we always talk about in policing, earning the public's trust. And I understand completely the need for transparency. And I took this job in 2019 to help advance this profession. 10 months later, who would have thought we'd be dealing with some of the issues that we're dealing with? But I took this job because I did want to make a difference. And I think that we can. And we talk about the public trust. But sometimes, as we're seeing in this situation, you have a chief that comes out with information. You got a mayor that comes out with information. It doesn't jibe together, and it just it creates the opposite, right? It's like, okay, well, who's running the show here?
It's certain chaos.
I mean, who do we trust? And that's frustrating. And the solution to it, I don't know, because we have one side that wants the video, wants all of that right away. And you got to understand, this is an investigation.
Yes.
And you have to give it a little time.
Sure.
And I know that there's people out there that say, well, we can't trust the investigation because of, past bad investigations or whatever. It is what it is. And everybody deserves, in my opinion, due process. And everybody deserves fairness. And these are hard situations. When people die, nobody wins, right?
Right.
There isn't a winning side here. There's a family that is obviously grieving. Then you have communities, what we saw in Dante Wright. You have, people wanting to burn down a police department, people protesting, people getting hurt. Nobody wins in these situations. And they're so fueled by emotion right now. I understand that. But how do we get back to that trust? And that's
transparency.
That's why I took this job.
Transparency, and I think that there's not enough coming out of police departments. Police departments want to lie and cover their asses, and I think that that's too much. I think instead of stepping up, saying, you know what, we might have screwed this one up here. I would have liked to hear from either one of them. Just say, look, we're going to do a thorough investigation here. Don't come out saying first that the officer was right. We're going to do a thorough investigation. I'm the chief, and I'm here to make sure that I oversee a thorough investigation. I would have never come out saying, "Oh, I think the officer was in danger," Because as a black man that's had my ass whooped by the police officers, that stopped resisting. I felt in fear for my life. It's always used by every single officer that kills someone. So that's like the boy calling wolf all the time, right? Isn't it time that we freaking do away with no-knock warrants? I don't know the stats yet, but I guarantee you there's a high stat of officers being hurt, civilians being hurt, and I want to know the number on the apprehension of criminals from no-knock warrants. Do you know any of that?
So let me just, if I can, go back to
Please.
something that you said,
Sure.
and then I'll kind of go back to the no-knock warrant issue. So you made the statement about the finger off the trigger.
Yeah.
In the Amir case, right?
Yeah.
Like every good gun owner, you're taught finger off the trigger, right? Can you describe that gun to me?
Well, because it was in black and white, but it looked like it was brown. It looked like it was a 9mm or a 22.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we talk,
And it wasn't cocked, because you could tell if it was cocked, it wasn't cocked.
So when we talk about getting out there with information, right? And it's not until you start peeling back the investigation and looking at some of the things. I'm going to show you a picture.
Okay.
Okay. So these are the two side-by-side pictures that Minneapolis police released.
Absolutely. Can I see your
Okay,
phone
yep.
a little bit? Yeah.
Yep. What do you notice about that gun?
I got the color correct. I don't know. What am I supposed to notice?
So right above the trigger, what do you see?
Safety?
That's the safety.
Yeah. Oh, you think he was clicking the safety off?
Where's his finger?
Well, but guess what?
But
You come in at 6 o'clock in the morning. You start him. You kick my couch, and his parents say he sleeps hard. What? This guy here is right now. If you tap him, you'll feel his gun, right? Right or wrong, right?
Yeah, no,
and
I
he doesn't. He doesn't pull his
every day, all the time.
And I tell him all the time, like a silly 12-year-old, pull your gun out, and he doesn't do it. He doesn't do it.
But my point is I'm not trying to prove a point.
Right,
with
okay,
these
okay,
pictures.
okay.
What I'm saying is, the information gets out there, and we don't peel back the onion, so to speak, and wait for some of the facts to come out. Is he taking the safety off to fire?
I would too.
You know what? We'll never know, right?
Isn't that what you said you do?
We can't ask.
How did you tell me you do?
And honestly, I've never seen a gun with the safety above the trigger before.
I mean, it's usually on the
weird.
opposite side. Yeah.
So there's something that I heard you say and that I kind of want to flesh out a little bit more. So I think it is 100% important that there is this rush to who can be the first person to say something right or something wrong happened. I tend to be the person that says, let me see the information. Now, in the case with Amir, right, because he, based off the information that was released, that he was not named on that warrant, and so far the information hasn't proven otherwise. My big issue when I first heard about the shooting itself was, okay, this was someone that was not named, right? And so going back to the no-knock, here's the question I want to ask you. Myself, I've become more libertarian, and as I've become more libertarian, I see that the no-knock, when it fails and someone is startled, that things can happen. Mm-hmm. So my question to you is, do you think that this tool, let's talk about why it's used, and second, do you think that maybe it's time to reconsider using the no-knock warrant? And how, then I guess another part would be, how would that affect law enforcement in your professional experience?
So quick answer, yes. Now, I was on the SWAT team for 10 years. We did no-knock warrants. There's different tactics that you can use. And my organization was actually a part of the last legislative session making some reforms on no-knock warrants.
Okay.
That was something that the chiefs, the sheriffs, the activist groups, we all got together and we made some change with no-knock warrants. Obviously, this situation now put it, in the headlights again. And when we looked at around the state, how many agencies actually use no-knock warrants, it was actually very low. Hennepin County, Minneapolis obviously had the highest. So I guess now that begs the question, well, why does the majority of the state not use them, and why does Minneapolis and Hennepin County have higher? You got to dig into that. You got to try to understand why. Tactics, there's some people, when we did no-knock warrants, a lot of times we'd breach and hold. We'd make entry and then hold and call people out.
So when you say that, that's another aspect that I've heard as well, is that the breach and hold seems to be more, because, some departments probably have policy that says, okay, when you breach, you might hold for 15 minutes or whatever, right? To give, almost, it's like you're giving people the benefit of doubt. So here's one of the things that I wanted to ask you, is that the argument that I've heard is that if you take this tool off of the table, that it will put law enforcement in greater danger, because there are some people that if they have advance notice, they will, basically barricade themselves in, and they're basically like, take me alive. I'm either going to die or you're going to have to kill me, right? And that's basically what it's going to be. So I'm just curious about your position on that, of taking that tool off the table.
I think there's situations that do deem necessary a no-knock warrant. You could think about a kidnapping case.
Absolutely.
Or cases like that. Getting rid of them, no. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think there are cases. Now, when we look at some of the cases that no-knock warrants are done with, drug cases, big, let's say cartel-type cases. Well, normally with drugs comes, guns. And so that was one of the arguments that was made when we did some reform in the legislature last year about, saving them for those kind of larger drug scale operations, because some of the legislators that are, were from Minneapolis said, hey, no knocks are targeting minority communities for low level drug cases.
Yes.
Should they be used for low level drug cases? Probably not. But there are situations that I think for both the people in the search warrant safety as well as officers. So we're currently debating that right now at the Capitol. Obviously, there's two different opinions on what should be done, but getting rid of them, no, because I do believe that there are situations that you do need them.
No, I don't believe we get rid of them. I think you're right. I think there should be mitigating circumstances that warrant no-knock warrants, right? And I think hostage situations or huge drug cartel-ish type. But when you talk about someone selling meth and they've got a couple pounds of meth or a couple pounds of weed, something
pounds?
like that.
That's a lot, dude.
Well, but guess
that's a major
what?
weight, bro.
But being from the streets, that's not a lot. We're not talking about the Gestapo. What's the guy that they? Oh Lord, now I sound like
Guapo or El Chapo?
Oh yeah, El Chapo.
Guzman?
We're not talking about guys like that. We're talking about some guy that's making, I don't know, a couple $100,000 a month or a year around it. Again, somewhat low level, and it is targeted towards black folks. You brought up the stat that I thought about and had heard about a week ago after this happened, how Minneapolis and Hennepin County have the highest rate of no-knock warrants. It does make you think about why, and then guess what? Who you heavily populated with. If you look at when a community leader put it on her Facebook page, the warrants looked like they were targeted towards minority folks, right? And again, there had been some deaths that had come out of them. So they wouldn't do away with them, but I think that we need to make sure that that they're used rightfully so. But I think that again, there are other evidence that may come out about Amir's case. But again, if I'm a legal gun owner and you startle me. We'll just use that word. You startled me. You come in my house. You kick my couch. You startled me. And I don't know if you watched the show. Yeah. I don't know if you watched the show last week, but I gave the synopsis of how they did the same thing to me. At 4 a.m, 5 o'clock in the morning, I heard them coming down my long hallway. I thought I was dreaming when I looked up and seen these dudes in riot gear coming in my house. I knew I was dreaming. Like, what the hell? Went back to sleep. And when I see them peering over me, they knocked me out, hit me with the gun. So I couldn't tell you who did what and all that. And thank God for Attorney General Keith Ellison, because he got them off my ass, by the way. But it does happen, right? And so that to me was it was an illegal no-knock warrant / raid, because they only had a raid for downstairs. Isn't there some responsibility that has to be had by your association, the unions, about officers that indulge in inappropriate behavior that causes death?
Yes. I mean, in any profession, you're going to have bad apples, and law enforcement isn't immune to that. And, we need to do better.
Are there bad? Great that you said that. I'm glad you said this. I like you. I like guys to give real answers. Do you believe that there's racism that exists? You worked in Brooklyn Park. I lived out
Brooklyn
there.
Center.
And I live, actually, right now, we share a zip code. I've always been scared to drive through Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, because those police officers, you guys had nothing better to do. It was only like 10 of you guys on the force. They're smaller force though, right? And we had nothing better to do but get pulled over for some reason. Is there racism that exists in those police departments?
What do you mean by that?
Have you ever experienced some white bozo targeting a specific stop because this guy or gal were black or minority? You've never encountered that?
No.
Have you heard of it?
Well, of course I've heard of it.
So officers in your same police department?
When I was a cop at Brooklyn Center?
Yes.
No,
No? No. Don't be all Pollyanna now. Come on.
So here's one of the things that I want to ask. So
Let me give you an example.
Please.
2 a.m. Okay, driving down Brooklyn Boulevard.
That's you enter at your own risk.
Do I necessarily know the race of someone behind that wheel?
Sure you do.
At 2 a.m? Dark?
Well, I can't. What, do they have tinted windows?
Here's how I view traffic stops, right? Somebody's speeding, okay?
Right.
You pull them over.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity to create a positive interaction.
Should be.
You know, a lot of people right away would get defensive. Why are you stopping me? Hey, just can I see your license, insurance? I'll explain it to you. But I always put it back on somebody else. Give an example. There's this four-way stop sign that people would blow all the time.
Right.
And my partners would make fun of me like, did somebody kill your dog, running a stop sign because you're always at this, corner. And it was a residential area where a lot of kids play. And so I would target, that four-way stop, and I'd stop people, and I'd just throw it back on them. Like, listen, do you have kids? If they said yes, I'd go down the path of, how would you feel if this was your neighborhood and someone blew that stop sign and your kids were playing outside? It wasn't about giving someone a ticket. It was about having that positive interaction to make them think that if this was your neighborhood and your kids were out, how would you feel if somebody was doing 50 down your road?
Did you make a concerted effort, though, to have those positive interactions with black and minority folks on purpose, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what we need. Did you ever encourage your fellow white counterparts to do the same thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Even as, and I climbed through the ranks as a sergeant, a commander where, I ran the patrol division or I ran the investigative division. Policing to me was about having heart and doing what is best, whether it is for that victim that now you're, in charge of the investigators investigating a case. It was just about compassion. And, I, as a former cop myself, I saw more of the compassion than maybe what the general public talks about cops in general. Nobody puts on that uniform and says, I can't wait to go out and shoot somebody tonight.
Well, I don't know. Depends on what state you live in. To you, was what happened to George Floyd, was that murder?
Yes.
Really?
Here's my personal opinion.
Okay.
First,
I like this guy.
When somebody's in your custody, you're in charge of them, right?
Right.
George Floyd was in custody.
Yep.
Okay. And I've had situations similar to that. When you have someone that is talking 1 minute and then not the next, okay.
Was it your doing, though?
As a police officer, because that person is in your custody, you're obligated now to make sure that you perform whatever medical issue they're dealing with. And to have someone that goes from talking to not talking for over 2 minutes, yeah, you're obligated. They're in your control.
Have you used that well, I won't call it a hold, but I guess they were called that restraint maneuver. Have you ever used that type of maneuver? Doesn't matter the color of the person, but have you ever used that?
I never put my knee. We were taught sometimes in the middle of your back when you're controlling someone,
like in the small of their back or something.
Between the shoulder blades though.
I was never taught that. I never did that. Back when I was a cop, we also used the hobble.
Yeah.
And we were trained at that point, never to hop. I think they called it cattle tying or something. We were taught not to do that. But force is never pretty, right?
Yeah.
It's ugly. And when you have someone that you don't know what's going on, sometimes you have to use force that doesn't look good. But it's also keeping the officers safe and the suspect. I've dealt with people that were either high and needed medical services, but you do have to get them under control before that can happen. But you do have to provide that medical attention.
So I want to go back to something that you said a little bit earlier. So when we talk about no-knock raids and warrants, here's, I guess, the position that I have, and I want to ask your opinion. When you say that your answer is no, that you don't think it'd be wise or prudent to get rid of that, my question is, at what point would you say that you have an obligation to have an officer put their life on the line? Because here's the way that I perceive. There might be two aspects when it comes to the no-knock. One, that you can get rid of evidence, right? Flush stuff, whatever it might be.
At the end of the day, if a little bit of drugs get flushed down the toilet.
So that's not a reason necessarily to use that. It's more or less.
See, you sound like me.
So then here's a second question then. So if the aspect is you want the element of surprise because you want to make sure that the person that's named on the warrant doesn't try and kill the other officers or harm people around, right? Because bullets tend to go through things. They don't, always hit on target.
Yeah.
At what point do you say, by giving someone a heads up, you are potentially giving someone an opportunity to surrender themselves versus if you don't give them the heads up, that you're putting them. So I guess the question is, in cases where it fails and someone does get surprised and it leads to discharge of weapons and people lose their life, to you, is that a reason in which you would say this would need to stop being used? Or for you, is just that's kind of the risk of the game, that sometimes people will lose their life, but you can try and mitigate the times in which you use it. Like, this might be an extreme situation where you use it, but there's a 50-50 chance or whatever. Maybe it's not 50-50. That's probably really, really bad. You never want to use anything that's 50-50, but 10% chance that someone could lose their life, but you feel that it's necessary that even in that 10% case, if an innocent person dies, that it was still worth using it to protect life.
I don't think an innocent person dying necessarily is worth the risk.
Yeah.
But in any situations like a high-risk warrant, there's always the risk for something bad to happen, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Everybody's human. People perceive, and we're talking split-second decisions that need to be made. You hope that the training, the tactics are all in line, but still bad things can happen. And I don't know the answer to how do you fix that without getting rid of it. But as you guys have talked about on your show for several episodes, our society is violent right now.
It is now.
And
it is.
And, there's, going back to what we talked about of the harder question is, how do you fix some of these root causes, right? Mm-hmm. How do you go back and really fix it? And those aren't the easy, quick answers. And
Correct.
Politicians, that's a lot harder for them to deal with. But we tend to go to the real quick one, right? Or what answer sounds good. When I look at the crime that we've seen over the last year, working in Brooklyn Center, we worked with the North Minneapolis police all the time, and carjackings and things like that happened all the time. Why did we start talking about it when it slid over into Edina, right? My other big thing that I struggle with is education, right? I think we can all agree the less educated you are, the less chances of success in life, right?
I would agree, absolutely.
So, right now we're talking about, teachers striking in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and the teachers union comes out and says, we need this, and we're so far behind here. But yet we throw billions of dollars at education. Why should it matter where you live? Why should it matter that you live in Minneapolis, that you get a worse education, but if you go out to the suburbs, you get a better education? Why is that? And I do think that is a systematic problem that isn't easy to fix. We want to throw money, but when you look at, from my perspective as a former police officer, I dealt with a lot of people that at some point stopped going to school, dropped out, chose, hey, I need to make ends meet, so I committed that robbery for $20. I remember arresting a subject, and I'm like, you just put your entire freedom on the line for $20. Why? Because I need it. I don't know how else to get money.
You let him go? You don't want to say?
Well, if yeah, he beat the person up pretty good.
Oh, okay.
But to me that was like an awakening. Like someone's willing to put $20 on the line for their freedom, but the need to them was, I need that.
It was great. Yeah.
And then we started talking. It's like, yeah, I stopped going to school in 8th grade. And so again, try not to get off topic. But
no. You're
we got these systematic problems that you look at Minneapolis. That you have the politicians and everyone else.
Got a horrible superintendent. He sucks. Okay.
Like Minneapolis superintendent.
He sucks. He's not transparent. He's not dealing with parents correctly. We need to get rid of his ass. The guy came over from Alaska. He got ran from Alaska, Anchorage, and he came here. He didn't even have a superintendent's license. Okay, so how do you get hired to be superintendent when you don't have a superintendent's license? I don't know, but he sucks.
How much does he make a year?
Well over $100,000+ a year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think 150, something like that. He makes a ton of money.
Wouldn't you? Can you imagine that if he was paid on performance?
Yeah, exactly.
What he would make?
How he would nothing, and then right, this loser. But then, like you say though, if it was incentive based, how he would try to crank out better qualified people. I remember when Trent Turker was AD, athletic director, state athletic director. The one thing he prided himself on is his graduation rate for athletes. He had a 98 or 90 something plus rate of graduating athletes.
That's crazy.
In Minneapolis, of any
good.
school, right? And in all colors. That's incredible. But they got rid of the guy, right? So we do throw good money out the bed. It's like throwing the baby, throw her out with the bathwater. Yeah, because we're so reactive to what happens, because everyone is so used to being just stuck in their position, especially as a politician. I don't have to do anything but sit down and rest on my laurels for the next 2 years or 4 years. Why? Because we quit holding their feet to the fire.
Or we treat Minneapolis differently. Now,
always treat Minneapolis differently.
Let me also give you another
I don't know if that's good or bad.
example of, we had 7 kids shot in Minneapolis. I believe it was 3 that died. If that would have happened
2.
in the suburbs,
3 shot, 2 died.
if that would have happened in the suburbs, would it be a different response?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, 100% it would.
So then I ask, what's the problem here?
What's the problem?
Is it politicians? Is it
Yes.
just, you know what? We confine everything to Minneapolis and we don't look, if it happens in Minneapolis, I guess we're okay with it, right?
It's like, oh, that's just Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And that's wrong.
Yeah.
Right? And where are we seeing, the most no-knock warrants? Where are we seeing the most incidents involving police and community? Here.
Yeah, in the city.
So one of the things that I wanted to kind of throw out there is that when we talk about using different tactics, right? I think sometimes people forget you don't have a department or an office that has a bunch of officers that are coming up with a game plan and saying, yeah, as they're walking up saying, let's kind of do this, right? It comes from leadership, right? Like when you're a commander and you're saying, here's what we're going to execute today, right? Like we have this warrant, we have this, there's these people of interest. It does come down to leadership and how these tactics get used. And I will 100% agree that in a lot of these cases, I think there's been poor leadership. So can you talk to leadership in general when it comes to law enforcement of lack of good leadership and how that can truly impact what a department looks like or what an office looks like, whether that's Minneapolis Police or whether that's Hennepin County Sheriff?
He's right. And that's not to sound like ask a dumb question, but he's right. I want to hone in on that too. Is it a lack of leadership problem?
Oh, you're singing my tune now, because leadership is extremely important to me. I think leadership matters completely. And, Arredondo,
Great sheriff.
I know him. I think
police chief.
police chief.
I'm South Sheriff. Damn. Chief, thank you, bro. That's why you're my co-host.
Great guy, but people thought that he was going to be able to change a culture because of the color of his skin.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And from a leadership standpoint, if I take a step back, and it's nothing against the chief, he grew up within that culture, that organization.
Yeah.
So how much can he see between, change and, transformation? Because I think there's a big difference.
There is. I never heard it put like that. Thank you.
For me, when I was a leader at Brooklyn Center, I think empowerment is a very powerful tool. When you become an admin, you may sit in an office now and you're dictating what's happening on the streets, even though you may have not been on the streets for, a decade. And I always found value in empowering the people that are out doing that job every day. So when we had a problem, it wasn't, here's how we're going to fix it. Here, Brian Peters, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. It was, no, how do you feel we should solve this problem? And empower, the people that are on the streets, support them to try to make that effective change. And I saw a lot of value in that because, after a while, I lost touch with what it was like to be on the streets. So empower the people that are actually out there.
You should run for sheriff.
No, I can't. I have enough.
You like your job?
It's not your thing?
You like your job?
No. Well, from a leadership standpoint, my job that I do now has been the biggest challenge from a leadership standpoint in my entire life.
Well, how is it important? I mean, we think of, I honestly, keep it real, I had never heard of it until AK had told me about you a couple of weeks ago. And I only thought it was just a police union, and that's it, right? I probably heard about it, but, kind of out of sight, out of mind. So how important is your association? And, again, is it an association that's only going to stick up for officers even when they're wrong?
Say it again.
So how important is your organization? I mean, obviously it's important to – so you're right, let me ask the question better. It's obviously important to officers or those that contribute to your organization, but how important is your organization to the community? What does it matter? Is there a relationship? Because, again, I've never heard of it. I don't know how many of my community members have had it too. So is there a relationship that you're a part of trying to help grow, nurture? What? Because I don't see any of you guys. I mean, we don't see too many white folks in the hood.
Well, we help drive policy change.
But isn't that policy that's for officers, that's pro-officer, not pro-community, pro-city? Isn't those policies that are truthfully pro-officers, though?
It really has for the last 22 months, ever since George Floyd. I mean, I started this job. I was a part of the Attorney General and Commissioner Harrington's working group on officer-involved shootings, right? This is pre-George Floyd, pre-everything. And the whole goal was, how do we reduce deadly force encounters, right? And we got, education, police, community groups, politicians, and we met for 9 months, went around the entire state, took testimony, heard hard testimony. And, what I learned from Brooklyn Center, you have to know the people that you serve, right? Brooklyn Center, for example, in the 50s and 60s was pretty much a white, blue-collar community, right?
Yeah.
And, when I left in 2015, it was 52% diverse. And we had a lot of our diversity from East Africa, right?
Yeah.
And, if you don't understand the people that
Which
you serve,
plucks my nerves.
customs, norms,
Plucks my damn nerves.
Give you a quick example. So I led our community outreach for 3 years as a commander.
Okay.
And we started working with the community. And we had one guy that said, when I drive to work every day, sometimes there's an officer out there and they're pointing their gun at me as I drive down the road. And, you dig further into it. And, the road that he would drive on, we targeted a lot for speeding. So, the gun that he thought was pointing was actually the radar gun.
Oh, he thought it was a literal gun.
But then we also had another issue with when we stopped people, they'd get out of the car and start walking towards you. Well, what do cops do now? They freak out. Get back in your car. What are you doing? Well, back in their country, it was a sign of respect that when you got stopped by the police, you got out of your car and went to the back of your car and waited for the officer to approach. So it was just this disconnect that, hey, let's learn about one another's. And so those same groups, we took to what was called the skills site where police officers are trained. And so we had them go through the, training. And so that was, that
cool.
was something that was
That's
exciting and fun and isn't done enough.
You're right.
Because that builds community trust. It builds community partnership. And, that's what the majority of cops want to do.
No, absolutely right. I think that's what we need. Chiefs around the state, especially in the bigger cities, St. Paul, Minneapolis, Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn, so shouldn't be encouraging, especially, in Brooklyn Park. I mean, I know that they're black officers, but they're not, how many, when you left, how many were on the force? 30, 10?
We had an authorized strength of 48.
48. So let me ask the question then properly. Is that all, what's the word, beat officers, or what's the word I'm looking for?
26 out of the 48 were like patrol.
Patrol,
Yep.
there you go.
Yep.
So 26 were patrol officers, right?
Yep.
Okay. So so how many of those were black? Do you remember?
I think it was, we had 13 combined women and minority officers.
Yeah. Okay. So right.
Low.
And we need women too as well. Doesn't matter if they're white but women as well too. So it was pretty low. You said about 13%.
Yep.
13%. If you were chief, would you have again made a concerted effort to make that bigger?
Absolutely.
You believe it? See, I like that. Why aren't you running for sheriff or chief or something? No. Do you go around when you talk? Because I hope you are talking to sheriffs and chiefs anyway in police departments. Do you express that to them that, listen, look, you've got about 50, 60 white guys here. We're just trying to hire some women and some black dudes. I mean, do you express, or do you, I mean, you put it the way you do, but do you express the fact that it's important, a community relationship is important?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's look at right now what's happening at the legislature, right? It's all about recruiting, retention. Minneapolis is down 300. St. Paul's down 100. The suburbs are facing the same thing, that now there's this push for recruiting and retention, right? And it's easy, just like we talked about with education. Let's just throw money at it. But when you start again looking at what our makeup of our departments should be, it needs to reflect the community it serves. In some of my conversations with legislators, it's like, okay, let's take away the barriers that may prevent someone who may want to get into this profession that can't. And I think a huge barrier is money. That 2-year college that Minnesota requires, right?
Yeah, associate's degree.
We had a program in Brooklyn Center. We had it was called the Joint Community Police Partnership. It was a partnership with Hennepin County where we actually got to recruit people within our community and who may have no law enforcement experience, but maybe were interested. And we had, I think, my whole time, 7 different cadets come through. And it was picking people from the community and saying, are you interested in this profession? Yep. Okay, great. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to pay for your school for 2 years. While you're going to school, we're going to have you work 26 hours at the police department. So you're going to earn money.
Is that like anything or like a CSO? Or?
CSO kind of parking. They did a lot of just different administrative. So it was a win-win because they got to work at the department for 2 years. We paid for their school. We supported them going through school because let's face it, going back to the education, there may be people that math isn't their thing, right? Mm-hmm. All right. We got some other people that are going to help you with that. The whole goal was to support whatever they needed to go through the school, get the license. They've worked at the department, and what the requirement at the end was, you at least give the police department a year, right? And if you decide you want to go work at Minneapolis or St. Paul, you can. But it was a great program. That's what I talk about with legislators.
That is. Chief Arredondo had a program like that,
Yep.
and those programs should be enacted not enacted is not the right word, but they should be used in other police departments, especially the big ones, because it is a no, you don't find too many black minorities that want to be officers, and my son knows how involved I am with police chief and other officers that I know and worked with in the organizations I've been a part of. And I tell my son, like, I got the ends, I can get you in. He's like, no, I don't want to be a cop. I'm like, son, be the change that you want to see. If you're tired of you and your buddies getting your ass whooped by police officers, well, go be those officers. And the one thing that Chief was doing too is the department, the side of the city that you wanted to work on, that you really wanted to work on. He was trying to make it his best to put you in that side. So I just want to tell my son, like, okay, here's your chance. You go do the cadet. You graduate and you want to work at the north side. There you go. You help patrol and change your neighborhood, but we don't see that.
So you ask yourself, why isn't everybody doing that? You know why? Because it's leadership and it's hard.
Yeah.
Right? We all want these easy fixes sometimes. And, at the legislature, it's easy to just say, let's throw money at it, right? Let's throw $100 million for recruiting and retention. But when you get down to it, money isn't always the answer. Yeah. It's those leaders that say, you know what? Even though this is going to take more of my time, it's going to be more work. Hopefully the end result is going to be great, because at the end of the day, we do have people that are in this profession that do resemble our community.
When you talk about leadership, now people know that I'm impartial a little bit. We try and have as many candidates that are running for office, especially those that are running that are affecting communities of color. And Jai Hansen is a dude that I think is legit. I 100% support his run for sheriff, and the conversations that he had when he was on the show are about leadership, and he has these different aspects. So I think it's important for people to understand that not all officers are created equal, right? I mean, that's just the reality. That I think it's a noble profession. I think that getting involved in law enforcement is something that people have to be built for, in the same way that being involved in the military requires a certain level of duty and responsibility and sacrifice for others. Those are duty-bound, firefighters, things like that, where you're putting yourself in harm's way on a regular and frequent basis. So for me, I think that leadership matters. And so I think, what do you have to say in regards to finding good leaders or trying to seek out good leaders, and how important in the process that is?
Can I tell you a quick story about Jai?
Yeah.
So I met Jai, probably maybe 10 years ago. Back in like 2010, 2012, I was a commander. What's your next move after commander? It's chief of police, right?
Okay.
And so I just started testing the waters. I was, at the time, I'm going to age myself now, I was like 42. Still young to be, a chief, but I thought, what the heck, I'll start understanding the process. So my first application was for the city of Lakeville, right? And got notified that there's 28 candidates.
Damn.
And there was like 6 different steps in that process. And I took it upon myself to do a ride-along. And I got partnered with Jai and drove around with him in Lakeville for about 4 hours. And, hit it off. I just told him, this is my vision. I talked about leadership. I talked about, empowering, not just, doing the status quo. And unbeknownst to me at the time that I did the ride-along, he was in the process for the Bloomington job that he now is a police officer in Bloomington. And so I ended up finishing number 2 in the process.
Wow.
And, it was a humbling, like, wow, I'm humbled. And I remember getting a call from Jai. And he said, Brian, I didn't tell you when I was doing a ride-along with you, but if you would have gotten the job, I would have stayed. And I thought, that's one, huge, very humbling to hear that. But, in a matter of 4 hours, apparently I, impressed him enough with leadership. The thing about leadership is I can tell you what you want to hear all day long. It's about action. It's about action. And you know what? When we look at what's happening in Hennepin County, whether you want to talk about the city council, police department, you name it, it's always about leadership. And it's about someone who's willing to not maintain the status quo. And, I think there's some good candidates, but I think there's a lot of candidates that tell you what you want to hear. And at the end of the day, it's about action.
No doubt about it. An hour. I'm telling you, I told you when you sat down, an hour goes quick as hell.
It goes so quick because there's so many things we want to talk about. So we'll have to definitely have you back. Man.
Yeah, you will come back, right?
Yeah. So you come back.
I survived. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, listen, I'm not a bad guy. I don't bite too hard. I don't bite too hard.
Here's the thing. In all seriousness, we've got serious problems to solve, right? And it starts with being honest. It's about having a conversation. But at the end of the day, it's about action, right? We can all sit here and talk about it. And at the end of the day, absent of having no action, people are dying. Our society is just turning an ugly page. And I don't like it. I know you two don't like it. So what do we do about it? We got to create this momentum. We got to create this dialogue and actually get leaders in there that will help make some of these changes.
Yeah, right now, as long as there's money involved. No, the organization I work with, we found out the other day that we responded to 61 homicides over the last 2 years. That doesn't seem like a lot, but that's a lot. 61, and I'm not an officer.
No, that's a lot. And I wanted to kind of go through a couple of these comments. I know that we've been kind of throwing some of them out
am
there.
I getting lit up on?
No, not at all, not at all. Rachel Williams, thank you for coming back. I've been looking to see if you've been watching, so glad to have you back. But Rachel said a couple of things. Number one, Jamar, when you talk about crime, you seem to have a very conservative view. I can dig it.
I just have a view. It's not conservative.
And then also ask if we've ever considered having Sheriff Bob Fletcher on. That's something that I've kind of thought out. I should.
I love his ride along, so I'm actually going to. I will
can help
reach out
you with
to
that.
him. Would
yeah,
you?
Can you? Oh, that'd be dope.
My granddad always says it's not what you know, it's who you know.
He's
Another question that this kind of is going towards Jamar, and even myself, because me and you hold similar positions on Amir Locke. Would it be different if you saw the body cam footage from the shooter, that you would possibly see that the gun was pointed at the officer and possibly didn't see his finger, where his finger was? I loathe the whole one view aspect. Here's what I'll say is that, again, I'm willing to concede that the information might change, right? But based off of what I saw, again, my issue is that from the information that I have, I think that this was an unfortunate. Now, me and you talked about this last week. In order for me to support criminal charges against this officer, I would have to see something far more egregious.
Oh, he needs to be charged.
Okay, that's not where I'm at.
He needs to be
I
charged.
need to see something far more egregious.
It was egregious to kill the young man.
I put the back on the leadership is where it goes back to me, because given bang situation, this is happening. Who they were looking for and all that different stuff. So there's that. Patty Shaber said, "Great civil, respectful discussion. We need more of this type of dialogue where everyone is heard."
That's true.
We agree. That's the whole point of the show. It's not about dunking on Democrats or Democrats dunking on Republicans. It's about having conversations, being real about where we stand on our aspect. Craig Rose said you should run for sheriff.
Well, you should.
Not doing it. Not doing it.
And Patty, Craig, you guys like us. You should contribute. Make sure you contribute. Drop $5 in the Patreon account today.
I'll tell you what I will do is I'll support candidates that I know have that leadership. The other thing I didn't talk about at our organization is we're a PAC organization. Uh-oh. So we give to candidates. We support races. And,
Uh,
you do sponsorship?
We can talk about that.
Okay.
Now we actually did get one question that is asking you a pretty serious thing.
Yep.
So this is going to be an unpopular statement. This is a quote from you, but Dante Wright, if he would have just complied, unfortunately, that led to his death. And it apparently said this during a WCCO.
I did.
And so the question that they ask is, do you still stand by the statement? And then ask if whether or not the Legal Defense Fund helped former Officer Kim Potter.
So yes, we did cover Kim Potter.
When you say cover her, your attorney,
The defense fund.
Your defense fund paid for her attorney.
Yep. So we don't pick
$1,500,000? No, I'm just playing.
We don't get to pick and choose who we defend or who we don't defend. If it was a member in good standing, we're obligated.
Because everybody has a right to a trial.
True.
Every single American,
even when you
citizen
maliciously kill a guy,
doesn't matter.
When you pretend like you're holding your stun gun,
which I disagree with.
So there's a question. What was the other question?
Let me go back
About
to the
your
comments.
statement,
Yes,
yeah.
I did say that on WCCO
Yes.
radio. And what I was trying to point out is, going back to how I viewed traffic stops. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, society, there is this increase in people not wanting to cooperate on a traffic stop. And what my point was trying to be is, when you get pulled over by police, it's, it doesn't have to be a bad interaction, right? And, actions have consequences. And my point was, if Dante just would have cooperated and answered the questions, things would be different. And I'm not saying, and my context, it went national that I'm blaming Dante Wright for his own death. No, what I was trying to point out is when you get stopped by the police, just cooperate. It doesn't mean.
But Brian, being a white guy that's probably never been stopped, you don't have to. You don't have to, and for it to end in death.
You're saying you don't have to what?
You don't have to be not
You don't have
compliant.
to comply?
Yeah, no. You do not have to be. You can be in full compliance, okay? And you get a bad officer, which I've had. You get black or white.
But that's hypothetical.
That's not hypothetical.
In this specific case, I'm right where you're at.
Had Sheeta spoke up louder and told the guy when she said I wouldn't have stopped. Had Sheeta been a leader and told the guy I don't normally stop for things like that, then he would be alive. She said that, and it to me spoke to me of her lack of leadership because again, you're training these guys or they were working under you. So she should have spoke up and said, I don't stop that.
But this is
Let
my
that
problem.
go.
This is reductive because if we go all the way back, the stop would have never happened if the person was in compliance. So I think this is the issue,
You had
right?
a cop that's noticed a black man and this white chick in the car, and then he used a smell good
but if
as
everything was in compliance, no one would have been pulled
pretextual.
over. So I think it's important to say that two things can be true. Okay, I believe that obviously based off of the way that this trial ended, right, and what the verdict was, that a jury came to, that there was a guilty verdict. That is absolute truth and fact on those charges. That still does not mean that if in a different situation, if Mr. Wright would have complied, that there would not have been this. I think it's okay to say that those two things are true.
So just because he was, quote, not
It's not just because. You're
because
adding
you say he
the
wasn't
just because.
No. Again, you intimidate this young man for a pretextual stop that you really had no business even stopping this guy for a smell good. So you knew there was something nefarious about that stop.
And that's a whole other subject talking about stopping people altogether.
And we got to get out of here. And because a guy's trying to get in the car, you think you feel you're in such danger. You feel you're in such danger that you needed to pull your gun. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Her stun gun. Her taser.
Based off of her witness testimony.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Oh, that heifer knew what she was doing. Okay. Again, listen.
And that's not what she was convicted of.
I will tell you, I've been stopped by unfortunately, I wasn't the greatest kid growing up. So, and I got pulled over probably a month ago for speeding.
Did you?
And,
but you're a white
my
dude.
heart drops.
But you're a white guy. I mean, come on. But you know you're going home that night. I mean,
do you understand that more white people get killed by cops than black people?
Here we go, pulling that out your ass.
The percentage of blacks is higher compared to the relation. But more white people do get pulled over by cops than black people.
And I know every Republican pulls that out of their ass.
I mean, this is true.
Brian,
there's more white people in the country.
Yeah, right. Where can people find you if they got any questions for you or want to donate? I don't know why they would. But no, in case they want to donate. Like what? In case they want to donate or help out. We're
actually a private organization. We, all of our, we're dues driven.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So, but I mean, if we don't want to talk to you, have you come speak or anything, where can they find you?
Boy, yeah,
you got no website or anything?
Yeah, www.mppoa.com. And you know what? I'm always happy to have the dialogue. I really am.
I see that.
And, we have tough things that we have to talk about. And, again, as I pointed out, if we're not talking about it, how do you expect to solve it?
It doesn't.
And it goes back to what you both said about leadership. Let's get leadership in these top positions that can actually make change.
Absolutely. Black, white, pink, purple, male or female. Let's get some leadership in here that can sit down with their counterparts from different parties and come up with sizable solutions that might eradicate some of the situations that we're encountering. Because right now, crime is at an all-time high. I mean, I don't want to hear, especially gun crime, or you want to be specific, gun crime. It's time to go to work and try to end some of it.
It's time to heal.
It's time to heal.
Absolutely.
I tell you, I like this dude.
Yeah, it's great.
No, for
great.
real. Honestly, we need more guys like you, Brian. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate your honesty.
Thanks for having me
you. Because your job is, I don't say defend, but you work with officers. And so to come here and give real answers, bro, I really appreciate that, man. And then when I always think to hear officers say that, or former officer, but when they say that the murder of George Floyd was just that's big.
That's big to me. You always just get so hyped about that.
I do, because that's big to me, because it was murder. And so to hear officers say it, that's big to me. We gotta go.
Make sure that you guys hit the like button. Make sure you visit our link tree. If you like what it is that we do, you want to hear more of these types of conversations. please hit the linktree/BRBD. Thank you.
Politics next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, guys. Go contribute so you can hear us talk more and invite great guests like this on. I want to get Bob Pletcher on now.
Yeah, that'd be dope. Yeah.
And then you're gonna help us.
And we have some candidates coming up.
Yes.
So we're gonna get back into that real wheelhouse. But thank you so much for staying tuned. We ran long, but I love this episode, man.
I'm Jamar.
I'm AK Kamara.
Peace out.
Peace.